Joining us today. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Just as a heads up, you all should have gotten the notification. This will be recorded today for this session. So welcome to It Takes the Village, exploring the role of expanded learning opportunities in improving early literacy outcomes. We thank you all so much for joining in today's webinar, and also happy National Reading Month. Also, you can go back to the previous slide, Kelly. So my name is Gabby Schwartz, and I'm the policy coordinator with the New York State Network for Youth Success. I'm joined here by my colleagues, Ali Lighty, Kelly McMahon, and Trudy Teta, and our partners from Education Trust New York, and our panelists for today. So today we're going to share the network's new policy brief, the role of after-school, summer, and other expanded learning programs in improving early literacy outcomes. This brief highlights how expanded learning opportunities are positioned to foster early literacy education. We're also going to hear from panelists that are spotlighted in the brief and that are working in organizations promoting early literacy through innovative initiatives and partnerships. So before we begin, I want to take just a quick minute to introduce who we are at the network and what we do. The Network for Youth Success is a statewide after-school network for New York, working with 49 other state after-school networks and the National After-School Alliance. We're committed to strengthening the capacity and commitment of communities, programs, and professionals to increase access to high-quality programs and services beyond the traditional classroom. We are also the state affiliate for the National Afterschool Association, the New York State lead for the National Girls Collaborative Project, and also the backbone agency for the New York State Community Schools Network. So to start us off for today, I'm actually going to invite the Deputy Director at Education Trust New York, Jeffrey Smink, to give us an overview of the New York campaign for early literacy.
Great. Well, thank you, Gabby. Great to be with all of you this afternoon. As Gabby mentioned, I'm with the Education Trust New York. We are a statewide advocacy organization focused on educational equity for all students across New York State. And we have been, as some of you know, been working on this issue of early literacy for several years now, and have put out multiple reports, which we'll put in the chat, and have recently started what's called the New York Campaign for Early Literacy, which I'll talk about in a second. I did just want to share a little bit of context, just because this is something I'm really excited about. In a former life many years ago, I was actually a co-founder of the National Summer Learning Association. So I've done a lot of work on, expanded learning, summer, after school, and the important role that it can play, as well as obviously the literacy work that we've been doing. And so just really excited to bring those two issues together, particularly, the team from the Network for Success is going to go over some of the stats and the challenges we're seeing in reading, but just big picture, as I'm sure all of you know, as we continue to recover from the pandemic and lost instructional time, it is going to take a village, right? It's going to take more than just schools to get kids where we need on this issue of literacy and reading. And then just the last thing I want to share, and I might be stealing someone's thunder, but I had to just share it, is if people were able to see the State of the Union last week with the president, as someone that has worked on this issue of summer learning and literacy, I was just so gratified to see the president actually call out summer learning, which was a dream of ours, 15 years ago when I was working on this. But he also talked about how summer learning, tutoring, all go hand in hand with being able to read by the end of third grade. So all that to say, this is just a really timely topic, and glad that we're able to connect. So let me just tell you a little bit about the campaign. If you can go to the next slide, I can share a little bit of background on it. And really the campaign is the next step in our work that has been, again, to kind of shed a light on the literacy crisis facing students in New York State. And so the campaign is really designed to do three things. One, continue to build momentum and urgency at both the state level and the district level to both focus on the importance of reading, but also align with what's called the science of reading, which I'm sure we'll talk more about later today, but really something you've probably all heard a lot about, but really this body of research about how kids learn how to read. And so it's really two things. It's one, talking about why literacy matters, why reading is a civil right and a human right, but then also, getting that to actual action, both at the state level and district level, which I'll talk about. The second piece, so the campaign, we now have over, I believe, 85 partners across the state, everyone from parents to early childhood providers, to school districts, to libraries, to after-school providers. And really the goal is to leverage that expertise and partners to advocate for better policies, again, aligned with that science at the state and local level. And then finally, when we get these policies passed, really support effective and thoughtful implementation at the state, district, and community level, because we know getting policy is the easy part, doing it right in the field is the more difficult part. So if you can go to the next slide. So one of the big pieces of our work is around advocacy. And so just wanted to share a little bit of detail on what we're doing at the advocacy level. Many of you probably saw that the governor included some funding and some policy around early literacy in her budget proposal, which we're really excited about. A great first step, and so we're supporting that proposal, as well as additional funds in the state budget to support districts as they try to implement the science of reading in the classroom. So that's one of the pieces that we're really pushing for. We're also working with some assembly members on what's called the Right to Read Act. The numbers are here if you want to look it up. But again, it's more of a comprehensive approach to early literacy that includes professional learning for educators, parent engagement, a whole host of really important provisions. We're also supporting what's called the Imagination Library, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. This is with the Dolly Parton Foundation that provides books to students really all across the country. And so it's in a lot of communities across New York State, particularly I know Syracuse has a great one, or Onondaga County. And so there's a bill pending that would actually make this a statewide program, which we're excited about. And that's in those early years, 0 to 5. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we're really going to, once the state budget is passed, we're really going to focus at the district level and the community level that you'll be hearing about today, because that's where the action is going to be, right? Once the state policies gets passed, the baton is passed to our districts and our community partners. And so that'll be the focus as the summer moves on. So I think that, oh yeah, and then just here some more. So the campaign is open to everybody. We have a website here. There's a link to join. And so we anticipate, having events like this with partners where we, highlight reports and briefs and share best practices. We do monthly meetings of all the partners and have just a whole variety of activities planned through the remainder of the year and beyond. So we're excited about it. And again, I think really excited to bring together all these different communities, K-12, out of school time, early childhood, parents, because reading is, right, it's fundamental, it's a civil right, it's a human right, and we've got to get it right. So I think that's all I had for now. And I think I will kick it back to Gabby.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you for sharing how imperative it is, how important it is. We're really glad to be part of this work, and also sharing about the current priorities that the campaign has at this current moment. I think it's important for people to be able to be aware of, and that advocacy work is really imperative. So thank you so much. So as Jeff shared, the current state of early literacy in New York really does need to be addressed. So the network's new brief that we just recently released highlights how after-school summer and expanded learning opportunities help address early literacy in New York and the opportunity for us to leverage them even more intentionally. This brief also includes examples of expanded learning programs across New York currently doing exceptional work in this space. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to hear from some of those programs later in the webinar. So classrooms across the US confront a literacy crisis. Reading scores are not only declining, but the gap between high and low performing students is widening. According to the 2022 National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP reading assessment, the average reading score at fourth grade decreased by 3 points compared to 2019. 37% of fourth graders performed during below basic reading levels, and the average reading score declined for most groups of students. In New York, the numbers are also stark. The percentage of students in New York who performed at or above the NAEP basic level was 58% in 2022. Black students had an average score that was 29 points lower than that for white students, and Hispanic students had an average score that was 17 points lower than that of white students. Also, students who are eligible for the National School Lunch Program had an average score that was 28 points lower than that for students who are not eligible. These statistics indicate growing gaps between New York students and limited equity in reading. As evidenced by these statistics, elementary school students are experiencing significant challenges in reading, which is further exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. These challenges and statistics, are alarming. Literacy is the cornerstone of all learning, including speaking, listening, reading, and writing. It has a significant impact on employment, poverty reduction, health and safety, and equity and social justice outcomes. Strong literacy skills are necessary for expanded education and career opportunities, decent wage, and effective labor force participation. So next slide. Oh, thank you. Students need intervention early to ensure that they are provided ample opportunities to succeed in reading. Reading levels by the end of third grade can indicate academic performance in later years with reasonable accuracy. So for example, 1 in 6 students who are not reading proficiently by the end of third grade do not graduate from high school on time, 4 times the rate for students with proficient third grade reading skills. Students who live in poverty and are not proficient readers in third grade are about 3 times more likely to drop out or not graduate from high school. And this rate doubles for Black and Latinx students who are twice as likely as similar white students to not graduate from high school. Research shows intervention for struggling readers is more effective in those early years. Thus, intervention during the elementary school years is crucial to prevent children from falling behind in later grades. After-school summer and expanded learning opportunities can help. Schools, families, and caregivers cannot address the literacy crisis on their own. Children need additional opportunities for literacy development outside of the school day. After-school programs are ideal partners to support literacy efforts through well-designed and explicit instructional interventions. They can take advantage of the vast amount of time outside of the school day to provide additional support to practice reading and writing through well-designed and explicit instructional interventions. The goal is not to replicate school, but it's to provide a supplemental education and enrichment opportunity to practice those literacy skills. The new policy brief that we released presents 4 different ways that after-school summer and expanded learning programs can help improve early grade literacy. So first off, after-school programs are able to support student growth and learning. After-school and summer programs provide support and space for students to practice and develop their literacy skills in low-pressure environments. This can be through formal activities that align with school curricula or semi-formal learning activities such as storytelling, book discussions, vocabulary building activities, creative writing, story dramatization, group discussions, leisure reading, and literacy games. Trained adult program staff can provide one-on-one assistance for students that are struggling to read. These interventions also often include evidence-based interventions such as high-impact tutoring as well. Programs can give students space to pursue reading within their own interests, something that schools might not always have the time to be able to do. After-school programs also are able to offer a full-year approach to learning. So during the summer, children lose up to 1 month of learning. Learning loss is greater for students in low-income families and creates approximately a 3-month learning gap between lower-income and middle-income students. After-school and summer programs can help prevent this summer slide and ensure that students are prepared for the next school year. Flexible structures also allow summer programs to explore reading, writing, and critical thinking through hands-on activities with youth. After-school programs can also provide equitable learning opportunities. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, children and students were affected disproportionately. Many students struggled to adapt to virtual or hybrid instruction, schools faced teacher shortages, and many students had fewer opportunities for learning recovery. After-school and summer programs are uniquely positioned to help fill those opportunity gaps. They can provide additional learning opportunities for students from traditionally underserved communities, especially those who are at higher risk of academic underperformance, often for free. Programs can also directly address learning needs of students whose first language is not English. Through providing a culturally sensitive atmosphere and a mix of learning approaches for English language learners, after-school programs can create a sense of community, embrace students' culture, and take a comprehensive approach to supporting them and their families. This extends out into family literacy programs that can incorporate activities such as read-alouds and lab sits to create a more holistic educational experience for youth. And finally, after-school programs provide additional resources for learning. After-school and summer programs can ensure that parents and caregivers have access to tools that promote vocabulary development. Programs provide a wide variety of reading materials and other resources such as literacy building games and toys. Reading material can also be by diverse authors and illustrators to reflect the community that the students currently live in. Many program activities are grounded in positive youth development practices that stimulate the social dimensions of literacy, where students respond to and critique each other, improve comprehension, decoding, and inference skills, and solve reading and writing problems with the guidance of a knowledgeable adult. After-school summer and expanded learning programs create literacy communities that are book and language rich environments with direct adult and child interactions. After-school programs can meaningfully engage families and caregivers to support their child's reading skills and function as a stepping stone for children to become strong readers and achieve educational career and lifetime success. So we're going to transition to share a little bit about how we can best position after-school programs to support early literacy development. So despite their important role, expanded learning programs often face many challenges. These programs are often modest institutions with limited time, space, staffing, and material resources. Due to constrained resources and limited funding, after-school programs often encounter challenges in hiring and retaining staff with expertise in early literacy. Limited funding also presents a challenge in implementation of proven literacy-focused programming. However, with public and private funding, after-school summer and expanded learning programs can be expanded to provide high-quality literacy instruction. To best leverage after-school programs, we must invest in them. To best position expanded learning programs to continue supporting students, the network recommends that we increase the funding for after-school summer and expanded learning programs to advance early literacy, as noted above. Strengthening technical assistance and professional development opportunities to help after-school and summer programs deliver high-quality, evidence-based learning opportunities and resources. And promoting effective school community partnerships that include collaboration between schools and other partners through professional development, communities of practice, and resource and data sharing. So we are now going to shift to our discussion with our panelists. So each person sharing here today is from one of 8 organizations interviewed and spotlighted in the brief, and will be sharing their insight and experience during our panel today. So joining us is June Muto, the regional network lead for Wayne County Most, maximizing out of school time. Tarja Parsinen, the founder and director of the Western New York Education Alliance, and Sam Radford, the director of Maston Resource Center at the Community Action Organization of Western New York. So we also encourage you to read their full bios using the link in the chat that Ali just dropped. So a lot of good information about the work that they're doing and who they are. So we're going to begin today with a question for June. So as the lead for the regional network in Wayne County, please share with us what brought you and your team to prioritize early literacy supports through after-school programs in the area, and tell us how you've been doing this in the last few years.
Well, we're out in Wayne County, and we have a rural poverty, and I was during my tenure as an elementary administrator, obviously literacy was very big, a very big priority, and we also had the goal that all students would be able to read at grade level by the end of 3rd grade. We brought in a lot of work, or a lot of professionals, and trained a lot of our staff, and we still didn't seem to be making headway. In 2016, we were awarded a 21st Community Learning Center grant, and thought, why not bring literacy learning into our after-school programming? And we partnered with literacy volunteers here in Wayne County, and we were able to bring them into our after-school programs 2 times a week, and they would do a read aloud with the kids. They absolutely loved it. It gave them some time to sit back and relax and listen to a story. We also ran family literacy nights. 4 times a year, we would bring in families, and our friendly literacy volunteer, Mr. Poole, would come in and read. We would put them all on a rug. Kids would come in their pajamas, and we would have all these families there, and we would read for a little over an hour. We'd have guest readers. I even was able to be a guest reader on occasion. And the kids all got free books afterwards that they could pick out. He always brought a ton of books for them. In the summer, we worked in cooperation with our district and offered ELA 1.5 hours every morning for 4 days a week, with a focus on reading and writing instruction. And this was done with elementary teachers and that specialized in reading. Um, in the afternoon, we did our regular thing of just, activities, games, and adventures, and we also had read alouds in the afternoon. So we really tried to get the kids involved in reading. Pandemic hit, everything shut down. We were doing read alouds on our Facebook page virtually once a week with Mr. Poole, and he became our rock star. And he had a great following, and we had many people attend. A lot of times we'd have the whole family sitting. You could see them on the Facebook page. And then post-pandemic, we're kind of working to get back to where we were. Funding has changed quite a bit, and we're still collaborating with literacy volunteers to bring whatever we can into the schools, as well as into our after-school programs and our summer programs. We're also working and supporting libraries. We're at the beginning of really trying to partner with the whole group of libraries in the county. And my vision is to have their outreach people come into our after-school programs and do some instruction in reading as well, and bring in a variety of books. We also started a theater and arts program that it's been running about a year now, but we're really getting involved. We're running workshops, like a 2-hour workshop where kids are prompted. They get a story or a prompt, and they have to write a story as a group, and then they perform it. And then we have mini camps, which run about a week, and they come right into the program. And again, they work on scripts, and then they do the props and all the other stuff and all the other great things they learn with being in theater. We also have big theater performances this month or this spring. We're bringing Mean Girls, and we've got over 30 kids from throughout the county that have signed up for auditions, which are this weekend. So they're learning, they're reading, they're writing, they're communicating, they're learning cultural awareness and teamwork. And it's just been a fantastic venture, and we're doing very well with it. And one other thing that we started, that one of my colleagues actually is very involved with, is an infant and toddler book clubs. We're running them in each community. And at the book clubs, the parents come with the little ones. And yesterday we had 4 months up to 4 years old. We're getting about 20, 30 people, and that's about good with all the little ones. But they have a sensory table that they play at, they do a fine motor activity, and then they read a book, and they get to take that book home with them. So that's kind of what we're doing. And it seems like the community itself is more aware of the needs.
Yeah, the way you said that made it seem like you weren't doing too much, but you're doing an incredible amount. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, June. Yeah, don't
Yes, you're
undersell it.
welcome.
That's a fantastic list of things that you're doing. It's amazing work, and the range that you're able to cover and types of activities to get people involved and aware is really fantastic. So thank you so much for sharing.
You're
I
welcome.
really appreciate that. Yeah. I'm gonna give a question to our next panelist here today. So Taria, we heard June talk about the ways that after-school programs are providing direct supports through the services and opportunities they offer. But we also know that building capacity of after-school and other community-based programs is critical to the success of promoting early literacy. So can you please share with us how you help build capacity through the Education Alliance and the Literacy Initiative in Western New York?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here. So I'm Taria Parsonen. I'm the founder of the Western New York Education Alliance, and we're the founding member of the Western New York Literacy Initiative. And the Literacy Initiative started a few years ago, and it's a collaborative effort of now we have 29 different organizations in the Buffalo and Western New York area, but also statewide and even out of state. And the mission of our initiative is to improve literacy rates in Western New York, especially in underserved communities. And of course, it's like, how can we create unique partnerships and maximize the work that we're all doing? And when we talk about the work of expanded learning opportunities, the after school, the summer, the high impact, for kids learning how to read, as we all know, it's all about the repetitions. And some kids, learn how to read after just one repetition and they're good to go, right? But the kids who are struggling need multiple repetitions. And that's what the after school and the summer programs allow those kids the opportunity to have, right? Which is those other, to decode, to become more fluent, to give them extra vocabulary. So it provides more opportunities. And the key is, of course, right, are we doing it the right way? And so the purpose of the initiative too was to help the organizations do their work to the maximum benefit. That's what they told me they wanted, and I'm trying to help them do that. So some of the things that we've done, for instance, Dr. Andy Aline is with the Hokelman Center in Rochester, and that is part of the Golisano Children's Hospital and University of Rochester Medicine, because we really see literacy as public health as well. He's created something called the Joy of Literacy boxes, and it's this amazing box full of tactile, amazing things to help kids with literacy in terms of letters, things like that. It's being piloted in preschools in the Rochester area. And so we connected him to another one of our partners, Say Yes Buffalo. And they, of course, have a preschool program called their Say Yes Little Scholars program. And they wanted to pilot those literacy boxes in their preschool program too. And we're also working with Say Yes summer camps on decodable literacy hubs that align with the mayor's summer reading program, which is also aligned with the curriculum of Buffalo Public Schools. And all of these people, or organizations, I should say, are partners as well. So we sort of serve as a facilitator to kind of move these things along and help them going. In terms of high impact tutoring, we have some higher education places that are doing great work. And I really feel like the universities and colleges have to be partners in this, in supporting us as we do this. Canisius has a great summer tutoring program, which is aligned with the science. It was created by Katie Pace Miles out of CUNY, and it's called Reading Ready. And that can also be used by parents and caregivers. And there's professional development for early caregivers as well on this. But they're doing high impact tutoring in summer in Buffalo Public Schools that way. And also the University of Buffalo Graduate School of Education, Professor John Strong is doing evidence-based summer tutoring based on his work with the Bookworms curriculum. And so UB is now doing, I'm sure Sam will talk about this soon, but UB is doing amazing tutoring, high impact tutoring outside of school as well, both virtual and in person. And that's amazing. And of course, how can we bring this lift to affect more students? Also a bright spot is there's another high impact tutoring program called Ignite Reading, which Persistence Prep Charter School just got going in theirs, and it's a tutoring program. This one is pushed into the school, but it can also be done outside of the school as well. It's 15 minutes virtually every day with a live tutor, and they've seen amazing results on that too. So it's all about finding ways that we can help existing programs and partners. But right now we're looking at opportunities for other partners, including the library systems, the Buffalo Police Athletic League, right? They're playing with kids all the time after school and during summer and all that. How can they maximize their efforts? The Buffalo Urban League, Sam's Community Action Organization, I know works with Head Start, and Joy of Literacy boxes, I think would be perfect for them as well. So we're all kind of talking and getting the gears rolling about how to best support our early education folks and our summer folks and our after school folks, giving them professional development and support and everything that they need.
Yeah, thank you so much, Taria. That's incredible work. And I think it really shows how much you can get done when you start partnering and working with other folks and spreading out into a community and really getting to know who's doing that work and what that looks like and what they might need. And not necessarily always inventing new things, but realizing what's already there, who's doing that work, and who you can connect with in order to get that done. So I really appreciate what you shared. I think it's really important and kind of speaks to that partnership, community action kind of movement in that space. I'm going to ask a question. Now we're going to move on and ask a quick question of Sam, kind of going along, moving with that. So Sam, core to your work within the Buffalo Education Equity Task Force is marshaling existing community resources and work to address education disparities and inequities, including when it comes to early literacy. So please share more about how you leverage community assets to facilitate discussions and address the early literacy challenge.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. The Buffalo Education Equity Task Force came together to, address the issues around equity in education. It's a broad-based coalition made up of, university, initially put together by the University of Buffalo Graduate School of Education, the Community Action Organization, Urban Think Tank. It also has the mayor, the Buffalo Public Schools, BOCES, Villa, Read to Succeed Buffalo, Western New York Education Alliance, Community Foundation. So it has a whole range from clergy to philanthropy to higher ed, the whole range of people coming together with a commitment to, one, ensure that every child read, write, and do math on grade level, and two, graduate college and career ready. And so what we were able to do in partnership with the University of Buffalo was in conjunction with what U.S. Secretary of Education Cardona talked about the impact of high impact tutoring, how successful it have been, and offered the opportunity to have students who were in work study to be part of a tutoring army, if you will, to begin to help us, use community resources to address this issue with early literacy. And so that was picked up by the SUNY Chancellor, John King, the former Secretary of Education. And so the University of Buffalo, jumped on it, and in partnership with the community, they put together a opportunity for a work study. It was initially just for the work study students, but when they offered the opportunity, they got over 100 students, undergrad students who were willing to be part of this tutoring process to include undergrad and students who were students who were work study, but also students that weren't work study. And what they did is they committed to it for the long term. So now they're building an infrastructure to where students, whether they're work study or whether they're just students who will get credit for college, whether they're students who will get paid to do it. I mean, they have a number of pathways for students to be part of this process. And so that they will be providing tutoring for K-12 all the way through. And so we're looking forward to that. That's just really getting off the ground, but it's really allowed us to put together a collaborative group of people to really, make sure that parents have that as an option. We also partner with Read to Succeed Buffalo to work with the seniors. You know what I'm saying? So people who are retired, who want to come and work in the classroom, they have almost 100 tutors who are now deployed into buildings to work with kids. Again, and both of these are, evidence-based, tutoring processes. Is not just, spending time with kids. And so that's what we've been able to pull together. We've been able to pull together in relatively a short time. And in the future, we're looking forward to partnerships with Erie Community College, who said they want to come on as a SUNY Institute. And so that's what we've been able to do.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think that really kind of similarly on that same vein of that partnership piece, but really mobilizing an entire community to address this. And I know mentioned earlier, I think Taria said it, that really this could be considered the early literacy crisis as a public health crisis as well. It's related to this. And it has so many outcomes. So I think mobilizing an entire community to do this work and to get everyone involved and to be aware and to know what's going on, I think it's really important. And I think all the work that all three of you are doing is it speaks to that so incredibly. So thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that. I'm going to open up a question to everyone. So feel free to jump in, all three of our panelists. So some would say that the early literacy challenge is an education matter and that it's one for schools to figure out. What inspired you to take on this collaborative approach to improve early literacy outcomes in your regions, and why do you think it matters? feel free if anyone has a thought. Yeah, Sam, you're muted, but you please feel free to jump in.
I'm happy to go first. I mean, I know both of them got something to say, but what inspired me is that here in Buffalo, between 2006 and 2009, we had a chief academic officer, Dr. Felicity Oladele, who was a science of reading person. She's a reading expert, and she was able to get our reading scores to double from 2006 to 2009 using the science of reading. And then after she left, they no longer used that, and our scores went down. And so I was part of a process to where, because of the work that she was doing, and she used cross-functional teams, she included us as parents. I was a parent leader at the time. She included us in that process, and I saw it. I knew it worked. So it wasn't a question mark for me. I was absolutely convinced that if we use the science of reading, we use a collaborative approach, and we come from the perspective of a whole community who is invested in seeing our kids getting better outcomes, we could be successful. We had already demonstrated that. So when the minute the opportunity came, Taria, will talk a lot. She did a lot to, on the literacy side of this conversation. So partnering with the Western New York Education Alliance and the Education Trust. I mean, the Education Trust was a cornerstone to the work that we've been able to do to pull all these people together to, start getting more people involved in the process. So that's what inspired me.
Thank you so much, Sam. And no, I see Taria's unmuted, and if June, you'd like to share, but Taria, I saw you unmuted.
Oh, okay, sure. I'll jump in. Yeah, just to piggyback off what Sam was saying, I agree. I was inspired by the fact I became really passionate about literacy during the pandemic. I think, like a lot of people, my eyes opened to a lot of inequities that were going on. But once I started doing the research, our organization is really more of a research and data group. But I started doing the research on this, and I really did see how this is such a solvable problem and that it can be done. It is being done really well in some areas. We need to look to those models and really learn from them and implement them, what they're doing. But yeah, whatever I can do. And I really do believe literacy is the work of everyone, all stakeholders.
Everybody.
Schools are important. They have to solve that problem for sure. But then we're there to support. And when I say we, all of us, in every aspect. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think again, it speaks to what we've been discussing, and it truly is a wider issue. I mean, we talk a lot about in after school conversations about how a lot of learning happens outside of the traditional classroom. It doesn't just happen at school. People are learning all the time. And so giving them spaces in order to learn and to give families the opportunities and the tools in order to succeed is really important. And it's happening all the time, which makes it something that's relevant for all of us. And we mentioned earlier about the impacts that early literacy has on the ability for folks later in life. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind as well. So I have another question for all of our panelists. So all these efforts are not without challenges, right? So what do these challenges look like, and what will it take from the state, from after school and community-based organizations, from school leaders, from all of us, to move forward in spite of these challenges? So what do these challenges look like, and then what will it take for all of us to band together in order to address them?
I think a primary challenge is people don't know what they don't know. So it's so important to be in a situation where you're able to inform people. And so having the resources to do that, we're really fortunate. Education Trust has supported our advocacy efforts to be able to make sure parents understand what's going on. But we need more support. I mean, the reality is you need the resources to be able to make sure, and you need people who can make a time commitment, because this is not gonna happen by magic. I mean, and then we have to have the right science in this process. We can't be doing stuff that don't work. And when stuff don't work, we have to accept that it don't work and move on to something that will. All of which I think is happening now. So I'm excited to say, those challenges can always use more support, but a lot of them there's efforts to meet them.
Oh, I think also one of the biggest problems we have is getting qualified staff. We used to use teachers a lot from the schools in our after school programs, and since the pandemic, they've been kind of overwhelmed in their own world, and we have had less success recruiting people who could actually do the teaching of English or of not English, but of literacy. And such, we need the collaboration and the resources, and funding is another issue that we have. So the advocacy is huge.
Yeah, thank you for uplifting that. And Tari, I see you're unmuted. Go ahead and share.
I was just going to jump in. Yep, to echo that, funding for sure. I do think the state needs to jump in and help assist with funds, because you know the high impact tutoring is so important. Things going on at the school is so important, and it does need that funding. And then I think another issue is that we need to put the needs of the adults aside and kind of focus on the needs of the children. You know, there's a lot of talk going on up above about theories in literacy, things like this. And if you're not familiar with that, I'm jealous of you. But there's a lot of chatter, you know, going on. But what we need to come down to is what works, what has worked. Look at that body of evidence, as Jeff was talking about, and agree to move forward to help all subgroups of kids.
Yeah, thank you for noting that as well. Recentering that conversation and that communication back down on the folks that are impacted by it, which are kids, right? And who will eventually be adults, but as of right now, need that investment and need their needs and centered in these conversations. And I think uplifting that the conversation around advocacy, not only in the space of receiving additional funding and making awareness, but spreading that awareness, like Sam mentioned, right? Getting that knowledge about what works, what's out there, how we can do it. That I know, Tari, you mentioned earlier, this is a very solvable problem, right? This is something that we have research, we have knowledge, and we have information about how to address it. It's just a matter of getting people aware of it and mobilizing them to do it. And June, you know, I appreciate when you bring up the advocacy work and the funding, all right, because this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't happen without any investment. It does happen when we band together and when we decide to prioritize it. So I really appreciate that. And Allie has dropped what I was about to say in the chat as well. I have exhausted the questions that we have, that I have initially. So does anyone here who's with us for the webinar today have questions for the presenters that you'd like to drop in the chat box or let us know? We're here to answer them, but any questions for our panelists? You can address it to the group, probably address it to an individual. I'm sure they don't entirely mind, right? Oh, I see something just went to the chat box. So in the chat box, there are many political and monetary challenges in getting students to adopt a consistent evidence-based approach to literacy. Given that schools have more resources and clearer lines of hierarchy than a mix of providers of after-school programs, how would you ensure these programs follow the science of reading? So that's a good question. Does anyone want to take a stab at that?
I would love to see us take the professional development of, let's talk about preschools for a second, of early literacy providers. Take the professional development of early literacy providers seriously. You know, teachers all over the country are taking something called LETRS, which is language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. I believe that's what it's for. But it's a very high level professional development for teachers. They also have LETRS training for preschool teachers. You know, it would be great if everyone who worked with kids in some capacity understood how the brain learned to read, had that basic understanding. You know, yeah, that's just my 2 cents. I think we need to take it seriously.
Yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts immediately they want to share on that question? I think that professional development approach is very important, and getting people in the same, like Sam said, people don't know what they don't know. So giving them that base and giving them that professional development in order to move that conversation forward. People know it works and people are aware that it works, and they're trained in that. I think it's reasonable to assume that most people they're in this work to help young people, and that they're going to be looking at trying to implement what works if they know that that's what it is and how to do it. And part of that conversation does come back down to that funding piece that June mentioned. Like, we do need to invest. We need to take it seriously, like Taria said, and we need to make sure that they have the funds in order to do that work. So I see another piece in the chat, so I'm going to read it out. Something that I have noticed working with 18 to 24-year-old block is that they really dislike reading. The implementation of the science of reading seems to have extraordinary results on improving literacy, but does it help improve with enjoying reading? So maybe this could even be widened to not just with the science of reading, but also how do you help young people enjoy reading? I think could be, extrapolated from this too.
I think two things. One, reading ultimately, you talk about 18 to 24-year-olds. I mean, I think our focus is early literacy, because if you start people young, it's more likely they're gonna like it when they get older. I mean, it's hard to enjoy something that you have to struggle to learn it in your when you're older. But then the other thing is, I taught seventh, eighth grade math. I saw this wonderful master teacher who really helped me understand that people, if you find something that they love to do, you know what I'm saying, people will read about things they're emotionally invested in. So they will find the joy in the subject matter, you know what I'm saying, and so that's really what you got to do. You got to get people connected to things that matter to them. And I think that will, influence, the experience they have.
Yes, I was just gonna jump on with connecting in with what they enjoy. For the 18 to 24-year-olds, especially if they're enjoying magazines or music or, poetry, whatever it is they enjoy, access that. And then in terms of if they have disliking reading versus being a struggling reader, those are kind of two different things. But so if they dislike reading because they are a struggling reader at that age, I would also say connect into, there are some really high quality decodable books made for older people. They're not like baby decodables, right? There's some really, really good books out there that actually help work on these things. But yeah, it's connecting in with what they like for sure.
I'm going to invite Jeff to come into our panel as well, so he can contribute some. Thank you, Jeff. But I will note, thank you all for that input. I think it's really important to center back on, like we talked about, centering on the people themselves, the youth themselves, and what do they enjoy. And I know June mentioned earlier that their program did things around theater and other kind of a wide expanse of interests and things that involve reading, but might not necessarily always be like seen as reading. Like it's not quiet reading time, but it's something that engages reading or engages that skill. That might be of more interest as well. So not only the subject matter, but also the way that it's being delivered might also be a way to adjust that as well. We have another question in the chat. I'm going to read out to you all and see who'd like to take a stab. And Jeff, welcome. So what roles can our community partners, libraries, churches, etc., help in early literacy interest for students, especially for households that literacy is a challenge?
I can jump in and start, and then I know others probably can add to it. So it's a great question, and it's really, I mentioned the literacy campaign, the statewide literacy campaign that we started. This is a part of it, right? It's not just schools, it's what can our community partners do. And so, and really it starts, right? We all know reading starts at birth, right? And so there's a number of things that parents can do. And a lot of it is just getting strategies in front of them. Sam said, right, you don't know what you don't know. And so, just sharing some really simple strategies with parents about both reading to their kids, having back and forth interactions, speaking with them. So there's, those kinds of simple things, going to the grocery store, all those kinds of activities. But then also a role for, libraries. I live in Rochester, our library system has a number of different programs that we're talking with them now about how we, do that a little bit more strategically. But yeah, I mean, there's just, I think, a whole host of activities that can happen, particularly in those early years. And sometimes it's as simple as getting books, in the hands of kids and families, right? So I mentioned the Imagination Library. That's one way to get those books in the hands of kids, but also in the hands of parents, right? That can, share those books with their kids and give them strategies on how to use them. So yeah, I think, just a whole host of activities that are out there. And again, that's what our campaign is going to be really trying to highlight, in the coming months and years.
Gabby, can I also share? I think one of the most important things that the community can do collectively is put out to change what expectations we have of our children. I think most people don't realize that 95%, according to the research, 95% of all kids can read by the end of first grade with the proper supports. I think people have got to the place where they think it's normal that kids are fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, and they're not reading on grade level. That's just really not normal. That's the science says with the proper supports that we should be able to have 95% of our kids reading. I think if the community knew that and had that as an expectation and got engaged with, well, if 95% of our kids should be able to read, why is only 25% can? And begin to confront what's the gap, what's causing that gap. And so I think people just awareness. I think an awareness campaign of what our kids are able to do if we support them properly will change our level of expectation and ignite something in people to get them more actively involved in, being able to, help all of our kids be able to read.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's both of those obviously very incredibly important points in those roles. But and when it comes to like these community partners that this person had mentioned, and thank you for your question, can help with that awareness, right? Sending materials, being able to start those conversations. If someone's coming into your church or your library or wherever it might be, starting those conversations or giving somebody information about it. In order to get them aware about what really this should look like and the vision that we have. And again, a very attainable vision while implementing this kind of work. It works, we know it works, and it should be a pretty streamlined thing to be able to work toward. So I see something popped up. Must be in the chat. Oh, and I see Trudy has contributed. The responses from the panelists on this bring it to mind when I was a facilitator for a leadership academy for middle and high school students that incorporated hip hop pedagogy. I struggle with that word, so sorry if I said it incorrectly, everyone, into action research. While it wasn't geared toward reading, I was amazed at how that incorporation made everything we did so much more interesting for the student leaders and staff. So I definitely echo the responses from the panelists on identifying what they love and incorporating it into the work done on reading. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Trudy. I think it works directly with what we're talking about, connects that really well as a perfect example of how you can do that, right? How you can show people that reading isn't just sitting down and quietly with a book, right? It can be a wide range of things and can incorporate a lot of interest. So I am going to ask our audience once more, if anyone has any more questions they'd like to put in the chat. And if not, then I'm going to welcome our panelists to share maybe some final thoughts. And then we'll be wrapping up for this webinar session. So last call for questions. We're getting closer to that 2 o'clock mark on the hour.
Gabby, can I ask a really quick question for the panelists? So I know one of the challenges in this space for community partners is actually partnering with schools and getting them to sort of buy in and really want to partner and share funding and accountability in space. So just curious, I know all of you have partnered with schools. Curious, like how you did it or advice you'd give to community partners that want to partner with the schools, but maybe aren't sure how to start that process.
Well, my organization has partnered with several schools, and you're right, it ranges widely. Some schools really don't want to partner at all, and some schools are really looking forward to it and looking for ways to do it. I think the way we've gotten into a couple of schools has been interesting. They want to do family and community literacy nights, and so they're looking for community organizations to partner with them on that and bring resources to those events, which is fantastic. And sometimes they can even be something more than just tabling an event, but maybe you're presenting at some point or offering a 30-minute session on, certain things where the parents are actually learning important things. But family literacy nights for schools are fantastic.
And I would add what we were able to do. We obviously we're talking about much more from the advocacy side, but we were able to work with the district. In other words, we brought the leadership from the community together, and then brought the district and BOCES to the table. And so obviously them being in the conversation, knowing that this is not an adversarial thing, know that we're here to partner with them. We're not trying to air their dirty laundry. What we're trying to do is get a collective effort, to be able to get better outcomes for all of our children. And then having them in the discussion, and so obviously the district is best able to talk about what schools can use what most support. So when we picked our pilot programs, the district helped pick the pilot programs, so we didn't have to go find a school. They gave us the school to pilot the stuff in. So, I think, giving opportunities for, the larger district to be part of the process can be helpful in large urban districts.
here, a lot of the all the after-school programs are on school property. We have very few facilities. Well, we do have one that's not, but very few facilities, even to hold programs. But the schools, once we got some funding, or they got funding, then they opened the doors to us. And as I was talking about earlier with the summer thing, it was really a hybrid program that the district actually paid for the morning part where we had teachers instructing the kids, and then we took on the afternoon and lunch and all of that good stuff. That's been the biggest thing. I think that, you know, they want to have an after-school program. They have to have it at the school. So we're inside.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing, and thank you, Jeff, for that final question for the day. I think it was a really good one, and a potential area where there might be a challenge. And so it's good to bring that up, especially with how important aligning schools and community partners and all this work is to make a kind of a continuum around this effort and this issue. We talk a lot about school community partnerships and how effective it is when schools and community partners are working toward the same goal. They know they are, and they're sharing information so that the students are getting kind of a seamless experience that are different, right? It's not, after school is not about extending the school day. It's about giving students another space to explore and to learn and to be after school. So it's distinct, but aids in that goal. So I think that was a really good question. I really appreciate you uplifting it. So I'm going to close out our panel now. So thank you all for your questions in the chat box. They were really good, really thoughtful. And to our wonderful panelists for joining to share about their insights. I really encourage you all to read the full brief for more information on the panelists' work and to explore the other organizations that we had there, because it wasn't just these folks who we did for that brief. There are a bunch of folks that we interviewed who have a lot of really good work that they're doing across the state. So I'm going to thank everyone who joined us today here. So thank you again for coming and spending this time with us. If you want to stay up to date on the network's policy work and advocacy opportunities, then we really encourage you to sign up for our Power 3 listserv. I did share the registration for this there, but also there's advocacy opportunities as well. And then we also have a resource list for the New York State Network for Youth Success if you want to check out a little more of our resources and the work that we do. And my email is also up on there, up in the slide as well. So thank you all again for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day. And with that, we're going to conclude. So thank you again.